great meeting. One is a special agent for the National Park Service. I think it's
Good evening. You're now viewing the Scottsville Town Council work session recording for the meeting held on Monday, May 9th, 2022. My name is Matt Lawless. I serve as Scottsville Town Administrator. This meeting is held pursuant to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and the state open meeting laws. We're meeting in person here at the town office, 401 Valley Street. The meeting is open to the public during this work session. We also invite your attendance online and over the phone. The options given on our website and posted here at the town office. If you're viewing the meeting in the future on our YouTube channel, thank you very much. The local time here now is 5 minutes until 7 o'clock, the posted start time of our meeting. So I'll mute this line while we finish our setup and get our quorum together. You can skip ahead on your recording by 5 minutes and you'll see us come to order. Thank you.
Get going here. I'll call the meeting to order and we'll just start with Chief Jenkins and the word's yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Thank you for having me tonight. I think everyone has a copy of the notes that I made up for tonight's meeting, but Tim Carter and I met to discuss our operational plans for 4th of July. It's for the town on July 4th. I did speak with Chip Walker, the battalion chief, regarding the fuel site, the fire rescue building. And they did tell me that it would not be accessible to us as the police department until after the civil suit was finalized, which would probably be, he said, sometime in October, November. And once that was decided one way or another, then we may be able to go and enter into an MOU and just actually take over that gasoline fuel site. So we'll see.
But I'm sorry, what's the case?
I think there's a civil case between the county and the folks that used to run the Scottsville Rescue Squad.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The Russian sports still.
I know, I thought it had something to do with the gas, I got
Also, that is.
I got you.
But I can't see, excuse me for butting in, but I can't see why your department being Town of Scottsville has anything to do with a nonprofit. That's out, unless there's a charter with the town or something like that.
I think my take on it was that if, depending on how the case was resolved, if we were to start it now under the umbrella of Albemarle County, and it would revert back maybe to the private entity that owned the building, then it might disrupt us being able to use the fuel site. And it would all have to be renegotiated. So I think that maybe the thought process was, let's wait until the court case is decided, and then we could negotiate for an MOU to use the fuel site. Is the way I took it. Significant calls for service. We've been busy as a police department, but the two biggest calls for service was the Truist Bank incident with Kenneth Prophet and the April the 14th call at Torture Creek Road. I have not gotten any further updates from ACP on that particular case.
That's
Mhm.
what it said.
Yeah.
Those details.
I did ask the investigations division commander, once they do get results back from the police office, if they would put out some kind of a formal statement to the community, because there are a lot of people that are still concerned, speculating on what might have happened and that kind of stuff. So I hope they will put something out, let the community know a little bit more about what maybe they found out, but I haven't heard any more from them. Some of the community events, we've been pretty busy with the town. Our town manager, Matt, and I attended the clergy collective meeting on the 21st at the Methodist Church this past month. The meeting went very well. The 23rd, Earth Day, great turnout here in the town. Auxiliary officers have donated 51 hours of their time to the police department. And you can see kind of where we are as far as a cost savings to the town because of their efforts with the town and the police department. The 14 policies, I just approved another 4 today. So I think right now we're at about 62 new policies for our policy manual, 14 required forms that go along with those policies. Also, we did successfully complete his 40-hour crisis intervention training. I met with Sheriff Hess this past month, and we did get our MOU signed with Louisiana County Sheriff's Office. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for signing that form. We've got full implementation of our body-worn cameras now at the police department. I did find out, hopefully, through a private entity, that we may be getting enough money donated to us for the 4 additional body cameras, the transfer station, as well as a new laptop computer and the mounting bracket for the inside of the car. So I'm hoping that we'll get that money is donated to us, and then maybe we can use some of our existing money for the in-car camera.
We'll keep an eye on budget here in the last 6 weeks of fiscal year,
Okay.
what we can do before June 30th or what might need to wait. Okay.
We transitioned our officers over to the 10-hour work schedule, which has been going very well for us. Hopefully you all have noticed a little bit more police presence in the town. I know it's still kind of early. This is our second full week in it, but I know it's made a big difference for me, having officers here in the evenings respond to the calls for service. And I've been working with ECC and ACPD. We're transitioning over to the new P25 radio system throughout the town and the county. And that will go into full effect July 20th. So I've been working with them on trying to figure out, do all of our existing portables and existing in-car radios, are they able to take the new software upgrades to our existing radios and these radios to be able to work here in the town? But all of that's done through the county's CIP process. So it won't cost us anything. It's just logistics that I'm working through with ECC and the county PD to get that transition done. Okay.
Questions from Chief?
Yeah, I have a question. It was my understanding that we, at least last year, did not have somebody licensed to fire off the fireworks. And we needed somebody to do that. Is that still the case?
Yeah, you have to have, from what Tim was telling me, they have to have a license. I think from what I was talking to him, he is licensed to be able to do it, but it's the permits that they have.
Oh, really? Okay.
So they've gotten all the permits. He said they're ready to go.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, they submitted the parade application, what, 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, parade and fireworks run.
Yeah, I just got the permit request that Tim sent to VDOT for the parade, for the road closure for that day. So I think talking to Tim, everything's in place for a full day for 4th of July. Parade, fireworks, the whole time.
Sweet.
I talked to former Mayor Nancy Gill the other night,
Yeah.
and she's gonna do a live stream thing
Is he
from
really?
her house with some selected people along the route, doing the camera things, speaking back to her. So she's working on that. Jack Maxwell wasn't gonna do it this year, so. Yeah.
And I just want to compliment you on a couple of things. This was 2 or 3 weekends ago. I was going down home on kayak down to launch in the river, and one of the Japanese stopped and chatting with me. And I thought it was a really great example of, community engagement with who people are. I introduced myself. So I think it's really great to see some of that gratitude. I don't think we said a lot of that in the past.
Well, thank you.
And I also wanted to compliment you on doing, and thank you for doing all the policies, because that's something that, I thought I didn't know what the policies were, and I think it's great, and Don was one there, right? So it's great to have somebody looking at them now in light of sort of updating them into this millennium.
I don't think our policy manual had been updated since the sheriff's office worked down here in the town many years ago.
As far as, yeah.
From what I understand, that the police department operated under Albemarle County's policy manual. But when asked, okay, so how about this paperwork for this use of force? I'm just using that as an example. I didn't know that was had to be done. If you're operating under a policy, you better know what's in it.
Yeah.
But the sergeant, Postolka, and I have been working every single week, I attend the project work group meeting once a week, and it's 3 hours, and we go through all the policies, and then I take those policies and I make them Scottsville's police department's policies.
Great.
So everything is very current.
Good.
Albemarle's got a professional company doing their policy manual, and I started that work when I was at Albemarle.
Okay.
So they allowed me to stay on that work group
Mhm.
and continue that work process. So, the policies that we're reviewing for ACPD, Gary and I'll actually sit down and we'll work after that meeting to make those policies, our policies.
Yeah.
For the Scottsville, Police Department, all the forms as well, that we didn't have before.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's really, so, for sure.
The radio upgrades, is that gonna, enable you all community through them? So, dispatch?
I think we're gonna still have to go through dispatch to do the patch. What I do know, and what I could see the other day when Greg was down here, was it doesn't look like we'll necessarily have to, right now on our radios, we have to work off of SBPD1, but you actually switch over to another separate channel to hit that repeater across the bridge. And bad storm comes through, that patch gets knocked out. So our portables, we really don't have a lot of communication in the town, other than the car radio. And when it goes down, sometimes we are not aware of it.
Right.
And I've spent most of the day down here one day, and it's like, man, it's been awful slow. That's unusual. So I called the dispatcher and said, hey, what's going on? Oh, I think that patch is out, still out. We had to cut it off last night because of the noise feedback that it was created. That's what it was. So they're having to manually go back and flip that patch back and forth. But my point is with that, with this new radio system coming up online, I don't think we're gonna have any problems. They are putting a new tower down in Howard'sville. And the way it was explained to me was when they come, the company that come in and did the look at I'm not saying hot spots, but how the communication lasers, Howard'sville sits in a big trough down there. So they're actually putting a tower on one end of the trough, and shooting that tower down through there. He was in the police department, I could hear just crystal clear. I don't think we're gonna have to have this one cut over channel anymore. I think it's gonna take care of all of them.
That's a long time coming.
Yeah, for sure.
And the great thing is, Scottsville has been a part of that CIP for the radio upgrades for the county forever. So it doesn't cost the town anything to upgrade our radios at this point.
Yeah.
It's been pretty good.
Other questions? Thank you for everything you're doing. This is Officer Wood. He was working this evening. He was having a meet and greet with somebody in the parking lot at Dollar General a while ago. So,
We handed out a few coupons today. I hope everyone realizes that I've started posting our traffic enforcement areas on our Scottsville PD's webpage. So each week, like I said the last meeting, each week I'm going on there and I'm putting where we're gonna focus on highway safety efforts over the weekend.
it's funny when you had one of the cars parked down there at Jimmy Marshall's driveway.
Yeah.
Everybody coming down the hill flashing lights like crazy.
So
What was really cool was parking behind all the cars in the car lot. I mean, you got 50 cars there, this thing is just hidden back there.
we got one down on East Main right now.
Yeah.
Pulled in beside the rail rafters. I talked to her, and she said, yeah, go ahead and back it in there right now.
I saw that.
Okay, well, again, thank you so much.
Yes,
And,
sir.
moving on, I went to the Chamber of Commerce Board meeting the other day since I'm on the board. And it was very lightly attended. Debbie was having real bad allergy problems, so she wasn't there. But the main thing that came out of it is directed to events committee. If there's any events coming that you think the chamber can partner with the town on, don't hesitate to speak up, because the chamber needs to get their name out. This event is sponsored by the town of Scottsville and the Scottsville Chamber of Commerce. So
Are there any events that they would like to sort of like take on and lead? And I'm saying that because given our sort of previous experience with events management, speaking of like in the before times, pre-COVID, we previously talked about just the amount of heavy lifting it asks volunteers and counselors to like run these things. They're intense, and burnout machines, and to be blunt. And there are some that feel like the town should sort of steward through, like the 4th of July But it feels like maybe we should reach out to some other groups like the chamber and say, hey, these are, because we have like that Toad Festival, Pollinator Festival, 4th of July. We did like a town day.
Yeah.
Mid-September, Halloween and Christmas.
Yeah, well, but I guess my point is, we've got these like 3 big ones. And it feels like one of those is definitely one that like the town should be like leading and doing, almost like holiday market. Anyway. But it might be interesting to see like, hey, is there one of these that the chamber would even like to sort of take the lead on?
You see any need in any of that, go to the chamber first and say, look, can you help us with this?
Okay.
Okay?
What
You go
was
through
the-
me and I'll go straight to Debbie or.
It is an overwhelming committee. Preface my statement with that.
Yeah.
I had no idea going into it. But I'm kind of just trying to figure it out as I go, and there's so many things that I don't think of, and I did meet with Laura, and she's phenomenal, like maybe kind of like a calendar of like January, make sure this is done, February, this, Are there things in the past that the chamber has taken on? But do you know, like, it wouldn't have even dawned on me to talk to chamber, to say, hey, you wanna.
Yeah, maybe it's been like business related things, like a few years ago when we had joined up with Fluvanna and Buckingham Chambers and did the business fair underneath the farmers market. That was kind of like all chamber stuff.
So Debbie is kind of leading up
Debbie
the
is the
chamber now,
president.
right? She's not one of the last time.
No, I never gave it up.
I have Debbie's number, okay, cool.
Okay, so just get hold of Debbie, and if you can't get hold of Debbie, right through me and I'll. That was the chamber report. ARB.
Yeah, I'm gonna very productive meeting on Thursday. The biggest item was we approved the site plan for Cyberfield. And so I think, I don't know, 3 iterations, 3 months, I think we're looking over that.
Since February.
Yep, and we had some final notes in our session, but I feel really good about what we got out of it. I think we've got really good plantings lined up along 20. Mostly the idea of shielding, sort of the lights for adjacent properties. They were very cooperative in terms of walking the property and tagging trees. We are going to do a final site walk with them. I'm not sure if we'll be with them or independently, but just to make sure that all the big trees we want either will be tagged. Like I said, Aaron Group is really helpful in that process, as well as identifying like the plantings to get on the site, especially for facing 20. And then some smaller details about the building itself, but so anyway, I think the process was very collaborative. It's actually kind of a nice example of working with a large commercial entity, how to like do it. And they were willing to meet us.
Pardon me, the sign though.
That's what I was getting next. So the one thing that we did reject was their sign. And I'll pass around a model of the sign itself. You will find probably nothing garish or surprising about this sign in particular, because they're advertising the market. They did 2 things to accommodate us, being that this sign is kind of like one of our entrance signs to town now. We asked that they include some indicator of Scottsville, and so we preferred this mock-up here, with the welcome to market at Scottsville at the top, so that you know you're here, right? I thought that was a nice sort of gesture. They're also mimicking the brick base that we have our other commercial properties up there. And then they have to advertise the tire wash and the market, so they're looking at a total sign that's 10 feet by 10. Yeah, so it's too big for our entrance corridor. It's too big based on our zone. And we talked to them about like, I don't know, can we break it apart or do something like that? And because of their business model and the site, they don't want to change it. And so as a board, we told them that we like the brick base. We appreciate aesthetically what's happening, it is what it is, but it's cool, and we appreciate the Scottsville indicator, but we rejected it on the grounds that it violated our zoning ordinance for the entrance corridor. They politely decided that was not going to work for them, so they're going to appeal. And I don't know if it'll be at our upcoming meeting next Monday. They'll be there to appeal the ARB's decision on the sign. So that's that. That'll be for you to all deliberate and consider. We can talk about it now if you would like.
Only because my brain does, and I don't want to talk about it now, but something.
It's okay, choose
To
work
the
session.
next meeting,
We can't talk about it.
my brain. I have an idea of what 10 feet by 10 feet is.
Yeah,
But I can't picture it. Is there any way to like superimpose, like get a picture of that area and superimpose what a 10 foot by 10 foot sign?
Any idea what that projection is? Now, is that what 6 by 6? 7 by 7?
the projection is probably 6 by 6.
Okay. So it's gonna be half again as big as that.
What do we do? 10 feet is the, up to the trim maybe in this room? Is that right, Matt? That's all right?
Oh, I
What are the ceilings?
don't know.
Our architect on the
It's-
board stood up and said, I'm 6 feet tall. That was very helpful.
It's bigger than this.
Okay,
Yeah.
That panel is like 5.5 square, so that it's within our,
Just the food line part's 5.5?
yeah, on a base, so that
So
it
the
would
10 by
fall
10
under
counts.
32.
It
base.
counts the base.
Mhm.
So that might be what, 7 feet tall?
Yeah, so a bit bigger and a bit wider than this one.
Okay.
I mean, I feel like that's significantly bigger than what they've got on Avon, no?
I was gonna, that's what I was saying, I'm driving by there in the morning now, look at the A-ball, it doesn't seem to be.
Doesn't seem
It's
10 by
gonna be a lot
10.
smaller.
Unbelievable. Sure, walk by it, walk around.
Yeah, here comes the other side.
Sure.
So they will keep the town council,
That's right,
and we either reject or approve their appeal or approve it.
that's right.
And then what course do we have if they reject it? Is it gonna- what do they do?
Jim? You got a filter?
Yeah.
Sounds like you're breathing helium there, Jim.
No.
On that, Jim. No.
I agree.
I don't know if recourse from there might be, would they go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, if town council rejected it?
It's not a remote zoning matter.
I think that the town council has the last word, and your circuit court is your view after that. The Board of Zoning Appeals takes on my administrative rulings,
Yeah.
but town council is meant to have the last word on these.
Yeah.
And then the grounds for suit, Jim will say, you know, if there's was something capricious about the decision, but
Yeah.
they're asking for an exception from our size waivers, and you can say, yes, we think it's in the community's best interest for this, or no, we think you should follow the same rules as everybody else.
Yeah, but I don't see any point in giving them, I don't see any advantage to the town giving them exceptions. So if they can show
Looks
me
like they
a
could,
reason,
looks like they
then
could whittle it down, I mean, you can put the Scottsville down here on the bottom
Yeah.
somewhere, and that saves almost a foot, 8 inches. You can whittle it down to two rows of bricks, take another foot off.
yeah.
Maybe, I think the real issue is like the body of the sign, the market, the price of the Tiger Wash, because the brick base and the Scottsville bit are not that serious.
Yeah,
You really gotta trim down.
yeah, I mean, we
I mean,
can,
that, the sign is 7 feet tall,
yeah,
so that's really, and it needs to be elevated, so I don't know how much shorter that brick base can go. Because it does need to get off the ground, so that you can like,
Is it a one-sided sign or two-sided? Is it gonna be mounted so that only you see it from one side?
I don't
In
remember.
other words, it's not gonna be like a food line sign.
I think it's one, I think it's unidirectional. Do you remember that? Remember they said it was one way or two?
We have,
Mr. Mayor,
There we go.
much better.
Mr. Mayor,
Sir.
The point was raised at the beginning of this discussion that since this is an appeal, you really shouldn't discuss this, or you're going to moot the appeal.
Thank you.
Oh, good, okay.
You'll lose before you begin, those that are in favor of a different sign and vice versa.
Got it. We won't talk about it anymore, Jim, thank you.
I'm sorry for the technical confusion.
No, thanks for.
That was
thank-
entertaining.
It was.
I'm very curious. Is it filter? What was that?
I'll still check out.
That's my Donald Duck invitation.
All right, so we shan't discuss the sign anymore, but I wanted to bring it to your attention just because it'll be before you on Monday, so something to think about in the meantime. So that was the biggest piece of business, but overall, I was very pleased with the process. Like I said, I think it was a nice example of an applicant working with the town on a really significant permit there. The opposite example is our other corporate entity in the entrance corridor, and that's Dollar General. They are still derelict on doing the landscaping that they committed to doing this fall. And so Matt is going to follow up with them with a legal notice that they are out of order with their own COA and our expectations as a town. We have not had a lot of success in this way, but I think the ARB in discussion, nothing formal was decided, but would be willing to consider moving this forward with more formal legal action should they not comply within 90 days of receiving notice to do it, feeling that they have the means to do it and just like have not done it.
Night and day difference between these two companies.
Yeah, so that's the other piece that we're moving forward with. Anyway, so I'm trying to know. Oh yeah, the CSX depot. Have you Matt's going to put a contract out for bid for the rehab work, right?
Mhm.
Okay, but it hasn't gone out yet.
I got some initial look at it to kind of understand what our scoping is,
Got it.
but yeah, still waiting on pricing.
Okay, so we're waiting on pricing on that, and then that may or may not require us to come back and discuss an additional appropriation. You feel like we could do it within this year's budget if we go over it. We have a CSX grant for
Mhm.
5,000, and we may go over that. Right, you feel that might be within this year's budget anyway?
So similar to with the police equipment, that we can look at where we have any other savings as we get closer to the end of the year.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's opportunity there in June to jump on something. If it's slow, I worry about that because some contractors are just so busy now that even if we want to move fast, we might not be able to. We'll certainly try.
Okay, good. Let's see, those are I think, the large action items from the meeting. The one additional piece that I just want to put out for everybody, just informationally, and what I think could be another interesting future use of the depot, is this River Center program that the James River Association has started. They just got a grant for $2 million to do these river centers in Lynchburg, Williamsburg. They just opened one at Libby Hill Park in Richmond. I'll pass this around. In any event, they got a conservation easement, and the idea is to just have a center with river education. Simple. And so they are working to partner with groups to do that. And our train depot is uniquely situated for such a purpose. And we sort of toss back and forth, what do we do with this building? CSX doesn't use it for anything. It's important to the town as its old train depot, but the town has a hard time accessing it because CSX is there. This is an example of what they've done now. I don't know if that's Libby Hill or not. In any event, but what it also involves is ensuring a view shed. Now, I don't think CSX will ever give us an easement for that laydown yard. But as we move forward into another round of talks with CSX about the riverfront and asking for money to maintain the runoff area there with native plants, this may be something to start talking to them about, maybe reach out to the James River Association about, to see even just to see the feasibility of the site. I'd be curious to know if the JRA thinks about the train depot for such a project. But I see it kind of as part of the move west to east across that riverfront from the conservation easement we have, the plantings that we're doing on the riverfront to improve the boat landing condition, talking with the Department of Wildlife Resources, and then the train depot. It feels like sort of bringing our historic Horseshoe Bend sort of into some usefulness that attends to sort of our natural and historic interest in the riverfront. So I wanted to put that out there. And so I guess my question to council, would it be worthwhile having town staff reach out to either CSX or the James River Association just to put feelers out there to see if this is a project that would be worth taking on and see where they are with their own river central initiatives.
Yeah, I think anything we can do to get some, more than just cosmetic use of it. Really,
Yeah.
great. Yeah. So if we can work that in your schedule.
Glad to. In good communication with James River Association on some other things. I think
Okay.
this fits right.
Any other questions for Mr. Bullock?
I
As we said,
had a citizen tell me this morning that the Tiger View property, the grass needs to be cut. It's kind of high spots.
so mine needs to be cut too, with $5 a gallon for diesel is not gonna, everybody around here with bush hogs is doing cosmetic mowing. That's what needs to be done.
But
Make it look-
it's a little rare.
So, anything else? Well, I've got to call Mr. Sutton that owns Tiger Fuel anyhow, so. I went to the planning commission meeting last week, but Dan will be giving a report, but I would ask that maybe Matt, if you could just hit the highlights of that meeting, because you were here the whole time. I left, well, not at the very end, but before the very end.
Sure, I'd be glad to, so thank you. Planning Commission met last Monday and took up new business, another one of the tourist lodgings uses proposed at 345 East Main Street. That's the Colonial College cottage. Planning Commission has been wrestling with some guidelines and policy on how to approve these. They were concerned that they did their work on the other East Main Street one and recommended approval, and saw the 1-3 vote from town council denying that. And so they're concerned, they want their recommendations to be valuable. And when they have a recommendation overridden, it gets them thinking about what can they do better to inform their analysis and recommendations so that they're sending council something that they can work with. They don't want to be in the habit of regularly recommending things that are rejected. So they're struggling with that and trying to put some structure on the feedback that council gave of balancing property rights and economic development with historic preservation and investment in the property with affordable housing supply. And they heard the difference between a project that was approved where a vacant upstairs was being renovated, that seemed good, and simply converting an existing home into vacation lodgings, and that seemed bad. So we're trying to put an analysis in place for that. This property is kind of an in-between spot where the property owners are keeping ownership of it, but have a job that requires them to live off-site. So they will frequently be away from their home, and they'd like to supplement their income while they're away. So Planning Commission is going to continue to work on that. In the interest of time for this applicant, they called a special meeting to continue work on this and other projects. So you'll see their recommendation at their next meeting. If there's anything else that you want to share back to Planning Commission between now and then that you think they need to know,
Which house is it?
feel free. The next one down from the car repair shop, labeled Colonial Cottage. It's a little setback, pretty small.
Yeah, it's across from the beauty salon.
Gotcha, yeah.
So do you know if they're planning to rent the upstairs or downstairs?
They said it has 4 bedrooms
Okay.
and the entire property is available
Oh,
because they won't be in it.
okay. And they're looking for two offers of the Airbnb rather than a full-time.
Yes, because they'll be back sometimes.
Okay.
They're working nearby, but off-site.
Town council should be aware of the County of Albemarle's experience with this, and they've had a lot of trouble with these things when you had absentee owners. Somehow the noise level that people can tolerate becomes less when they're actually living there than if they're living somewhere else, if that makes sense to you. So you might want to consult the county about some of the experiences they've had in trying to regulate this.
Yeah, I thank you for that, Jim. I think that's good feedback. I think the planning commission should look at that. I'm curious, well, two things. One, I do think it might be helpful for the planning commission and council to have a joint session just about Airbnb permits.
They would love that.
Because I think, we've sort of made some pretty clear decisions that we don't want to lose existing residents, apartment or otherwise. We want to see a thing integrated into some overall plan. That felt like what we were talking about on Valley Street recently. But we also see the need for some transient lodging. Obviously, that is, a need for something. So it might be worthwhile for us to get together to workshop some criteria, so that when they're evaluating something, we're all looking at the same thing and saying, does this property do X, Y, Z? There will be room for interpretation. We're not going to be able to get just like a checklist criteria. The other way to go about it, and this is more just like procedural and anyway, procedural, go with that. Like the roles and responsibilities. So is planning commission's role in this kind of situation to say, you have a permit, you can do this in town, so check. You know what I mean? Like, are they just kind of like a body that says, do you fit our zoning criteria? Then you can have an Airbnb here. And is it the council's decision then to use discretion in terms of whether or not something is approved based on the council's vision, if you will, for what Airbnb should be? So that's my question. Which is like the more appropriate route, do you think?
I think you can do either. If you want to lay that out with closer to a checklist sort of structure, and that if they recommend one way or another, it's because they followed a formula that you agreed on, that's okay. And I think would be helpful to them. Absent that, they're going to look at zoning ordinance and comprehensive plan and make a recommendation based on that. And they're not going to be interested in tax revenue, for example, because the budget's not their issue. And so they might recommend no on something and because of zoning inconsistency. And you say, well, no, this is such a good business opportunity that we think it's worth it. And that's a fair thing to say. You see this back and forth in the news with school boards and governing bodies a lot, where the school board recommends, this is what we need to run the best school system. And the governing body says, we don't have that much money, sorry. And so they don't match.
In terms of planning commission, like, do you feel like
I
we're all
feel
doing
the latter. I feel like they can have a formulaic approval process personally. Does they check every box and then, it's not, like this one, for example, I'm all on board with. I mean, if they're not gonna rent it out because they need to live there sometimes, but they can rent it out on the weekends or a week or month that they're not there, then it's great, we're not losing. But that, that could be a discussion for us where, they approve everything. Or, not everything, not like everything that meets the criteria.
That being said, if the planning commission is asking for guidance, it feels like, and because it sounds like we also want to be aligned with our own decision making. So in that case, it might be worthwhile having a joint session of some kind.
Maybe to talk more around this issue of, workforce housing preservation. Because it felt a little bit like, okay, how many is too many? And that certainly can be case by case. We're getting more of these than we used to, but it's hasn't been more than one at a time. But yeah, I think they're trying to feel out what those goals are, especially for workforce housing.
So what would be the best way to go about doing that? Do we call a special meeting? Do we make it part of a work session?
Planning commission ought to call a special meeting devoted just to that, like they were gonna do for the PUD.
Mhm.
And then invite the council.
Okay.
Rather than us set the meeting and invite them,
Mhm.
we'll try to work out a date together.
Would council be willing to take the first Monday on a month and join planning commission at their meeting?
Or a portion of it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've come to a lot of the meetings and watched on Zoom anyhow.
I'll check about that for one of their upcoming agendas.
Anything else on that report?
They are continuing work more urgently on their planned unit development framework. I sent that news around to council as well because it felt like it was pretty fast moving. The land deal with Southern Development buying all of the old Virginia Land Company property, that has closed. I still need to get the courthouse property records to find out the amount of money and any details in that deal. But we have a new set of investors in town, and they are motivated. I think it's not the kind of buy and hold strategy that Dr. Hurt had for 30 years on his assets in town. So we feel a sense of urgency to set up PUD as the rules framework that can guide that development. Otherwise, they're applying under the base zoning, and I don't think that gets us the kind of product that we want. There's more room to negotiate open space preservation, neighborhood amenities, mixed use and mixed income, the kind of good development that we want to see if we have a special framework to hammer it out. So planning commission is working diligently on that, both on two parts of it, a community piece about what are the goals of that development, and I identify here's what a win looks like, here's what we want to see, and then a technical review checklist of what does a complete application need to have so that we can judge it fairly. Most of this ordinance drafting was done by Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission planners for us already. So I think we have a 90% draft in place, but a little bit more outreach on those development goals and the content of the application. Planning Commission will hammer that out and report a recommendation sooner rather than later to you. That'll take the form of a zoning amendment for public hearing and vote later this year.
Anything else?
That's it.
Mr. Treasurer.
At that kind of finishing point in the fiscal year, and we'll talk more about upcoming budget later in this agenda. But as we spoke to the CSX work and the police equipment work, the trick at this point in the fiscal year is to keep our line items landing where they need to. And sometimes we put projects on hold if a line item is going to go over. Other times we know we have the opportunity to get ahead where there's space in the budget. So that's what we're checking on now. Mr. Rodales updated a meals tax tracking spreadsheet that we've been using, and that shows pretty good restaurant activity in the year to date. It's our single largest revenue line, so that's important for landing the whole budget. We work with each of them case by case, and so with our congratulating Eric and Corey LaFontaine on their new jobs and new baby and adventures in life. But the Bend Barbecue is closing down as they go to do other things. So that's an available restaurant space. But every meals tax customer makes a difference. So we watch things like that and shift from treasurer hat to economic development hat and try to get a new restaurant in there.
Thank you. Any questions?
Welcome to.
All right, mayor's report. Participated in Earth Day events. I was here for the last session of the small business development Shark Tank thing, which was really fun. It was a lot of fun. And for those that don't know, Beth from the yoga studio was awarded $5,000 grant. Lou was awarded $5,000 grant. Terry Butler, who does wedding gowns and wedding plannings, and she's going in across the street where the gift shop is now.
Yeah.
Gift shop bought Peter's house. Okay. So she got 15,000. And what was the gentleman's name?
William Anderson.
Okay, he wants to start a security firm based in town, a private security firm, and he got 15,000 for that. And it was just a lot of fun because that is a big old church, you know. Maybe we can do it again sometime. I mentioned I went to the planning commission meeting and the Chamber of Commerce. Congressman Good was in town. Was it last Friday? Friday before. Friday before. And I had a out-of-town engagement, so Dan escorted him around. And if Dan wants to give a report tonight on that, he can, or if he wants to do it next week at the regular meeting, I'll leave that up to him. Been in regular communication with Supervisor Price, who has thrown her hat in the ring for the run for General Assembly from the new 55th district that's been created. So she should have her paperwork done by now. We had a board meeting of the museum Saturday morning, which I'm on that board, and we are going to do the spirit walk this year. Last weekend in October, 22nd, 23rd. We're partnering with a SCAN. Kristen is doing, and SCAN are doing everything basically. We're going to provide tour guides, and that's about it. And then after all the expenses, we're going to split the profits and SCAN. But they're doing selecting the actors, writing the scripts, doing the costuming. I'm going to help Kristen with the advertising. So, I did go by Tiger Fuels last Tuesday to try to meet with Mr. Sutton, the president, and he was in a meeting. But I left word with his secretary that you're basically there to thank him for selecting Scottsville as a site for their newest Tiger Fuels. And then for those that don't know, we do have a new law firm in town. Remember where Dr. Bush's office was in this Ramsey building, first floor on the side? Well, they're in the second half of that, and it's Boors, B-O-O-R-S, and Kenefick, K-E-N-E-F-I-C-K. Boors is Nevin Boors, and Kenefick is Devin Kenefick. And Boors is a male, and Devin is a female, and they're married. And they live in Howardsville, and they both stand to Penn State people. So they have opened a practice there, and real nice young couple. And to me now, everybody's young, but they're probably in their 30s, you know, probably in their 30s, and just very nice to talk to. And they have already joined the Chamber of Commerce, and they, Mr. Boors has already joined the volunteer fire department.
Wow.
So they're getting involved in the community. So go to their website and we'll find out all about it. That is about it. Any questions? Did you want to do that tonight or next week?
I can make a couple comments.
If you can make it not too long.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The main thing I would say would be one thing to add probably to what you said about the planning commission would be that we did have a good conversation about what the planning commission might recommend to the town council related to ideas about the Airbnbs. And I thought that was a good conversation. It's not a final thing or anything, but it was the idea was to try to get their brains picked, so to speak, to give us recommendations, so ideas that we could think about. So I thought that was a good conversation. The thing related to the congressman, I would defer some to Councilman Payne, who actually escorted the congressman. The same thing with our administrator. I did meet him for lunch, but Councilman Payne, do you want to add something related to the time you had with the congressman?
Well, we had a fine lunch with him and the gentleman, Chris, I can't remember his last name.
Snyder.
Okay. Nice conversation. We discussed what the federal government had done to help Scottsville with the levy years back. And that kind of took them on a tour of the levy and explained, when it was built, how it was built, why it was built. And showed them some of it. We wanted to show them the pumping operations, so we didn't get down that farm. Then we planted a tree over by the river. And that stayed with some equipment, so 3 of us just walked back through Main Street, and I just pointed out some things. Had questions about it. It's a small town, and we just had a little chat. We chatted along a lot, and off we went to the next farm.
I appreciate both of you looking after him while he was here. I have to say, I had already had something on the calendar that was in Rose that afternoon. I had to go over there.
The one other subject, just to mention, Mr. Mayor, you may have covered this already. And Mr. Lawless, you might add a little bit on this. Out of a bit unexpected, the DWR, the Department of Wildlife Resources, offered us $50,000 to fund a dock. And Matt has been at work related to looking for designs about that. That $50,000 was unexpected. We do think it may have come from some funding that they get from actually ammo sales, which is up this time, which is up in COVID. They also have a limited time period that they have to use it. The other thing that is happening with this is I recontacted Robin Clark, who is with Virginia Wheel and Sportsman. In the past, they've been involved with giving us some advice. These guys are wheelchair or other disabilities that they have, and we want to make sure when we come up with the right design for the dock that we incorporate their ideas. There's some other local people that have interest in that. The other thing that I will say is when we originally did the master plan for the park years ago, we had a faulty idea, which was to think of access for people with disabilities in one area. In reality, we need to think of maximum ability for them to see as much of the park as possible. There's certainly going to be places they can't get to, but trying to think of it the other way around is what's the maximum we can do. So the guys with the Wheel and Virginia Sportsman in the past had committed a couple $1,000s that they would help us. That money is gone, but they think they can match what they were going to do in the past and early on, either late fall or maybe into the winter. So that's helpful in terms of part of the design. And Matt, if you want to mention any in terms of your looking at where we are on it.
No, that's right. Quite the windfall. Council, remember we had gotten under contract with the state to operate this dock, provided that they pay for the installation of it. And several years went by and they couldn't fund that on their own, partly because of their own procurement problems. And so they now have something of a windfall, and our contract was flexible enough to get back in touch with them. So I'm happy to run the design and procurement for them, and they'll pay for it.
So this is kind of a big deal. The original dock that they were talking about was a $15,000 dock. So to come back with $50,000 is helpful. So anyways, that's in process at the moment. And we do want to involve people in terms of as we get to the final design of the dock. We're very open to public opinion and thoughts that people have in terms of how we do it. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions for Dan?
No, I do want to add though, as it relates to the park, I had a conversation with our tourism guy down here, comes down the farmers market, about getting the trails on the internet.
Yes.
And so I walked the trails in Bank Creek, and then I just did the levee walk the other day. And so I turned off my phone. I turned off my phone. That's right. It's needed.
How respectful.
I think it's called Hiking Trails app. It's really not a very clever title, but like a lot of people use it if they come into an area. Are there trails around here? He came up to me and said, "Do you put your trails on the thing?" I was like, "I did." No, they were. So I don't know if we can get. It might be an interesting idea to get a QR code for like the Meat Creek Trail landed on our paper copy, and then you can zap it with your phone, and then all the trails around here just pop up. So I need to do the Eagle Trail is the only one I didn't walk. Is that one finished, finished?
Well, it's usable. There's an aspect of it to where it's.
It has a sign, so
Yes.
I figure if it has a sign, you can walk.
Yeah.
So I think I'll add that one, and then they're just up there, and then it's kind of an interactive thing where people walk it, they can rate it, they can make comments, they can make suggestions to change it. So, that just puts us on the map a little bit more in the digital world, so the people who are looking for trails in the town, they see it and they know to stop.
There's a
Good thing.
Councilor Bullock, that's a really good point. If I might add something that is a little bit more, what do I want to say, just historic, is that when we adopted the name Scottsville Lake, it had been the Mink Creek Impoundment, lovely name that it had in the past, but Scottsville Lake, it's taken a while. There's several ways that you can have a name like that adopted, and one of them is you go to the National Geologic Survey and you go in to tell them about it, which Matt, at some point we need to do. But one of the ways you do that is you have to have several organizations that reference it. So the DWR has been referencing it. Albemarle County is more referencing it, and it's slowly getting referenced. The one other thing that I mentioned this is, for some odd reason, if you look at Google Maps, you don't see a lake, which is kind of strange. So in other words, there's odd things when you go and you see there's no lake there. So if you look at Todier Creek is known as a lake, but we're not. So why that is, it makes no sense to me. But at some point, there's a few oddities, like go back to what you just said right now. So why there's no lake there, I don't know, but it's there. It is there. It is wet. But Matt, I don't know how to answer that. At one point, actually, I tried to contact Google and try to say, like, what do you do to get your lake on the map? So at some point, if somebody out there technically knows how to answer that question, it'd be helpful, because it's the same issue. When people look, they don't see a lake.
For all as I'm on this site, I've never noticed that.
Really? You're just, well, it's like we're blind to what we don't see, right?
Yeah.
And we don't see it there. But anyways, but there are things like that, and Zach, that's great. That is super that you saw that. And any other, I know there was an effort at one point about geocaching too. Should we, and any things like that kind of get us on the map is a good idea.
Anything else on that topic?
Are those trails good for biking also? It's not just hiking.
You
I've
could,
been on them, but I as someone who's not a mountain biker.
they're not designed as biking trails, you know, when you think of what a cycling trail is, but it's not, there's not a sign that says you can't take your bike on it. It's certainly in the future, when the Mink Creek Trail itself there's 5 different places where it needs a culvert or something on there. It's a nice bike ride, other than whacking yourself on a few rocks in those areas. What's that? It's true. That's true.
My brother-in-law writes code and is actually working on, he's an avid mountain biker, so you know, on the side for fun, he's coming up with a new biking trail app that pretty much exactly what you were saying, but geared towards mountain bikers. I never thought of
Well,
it.
if you look
Say,
at,
why don't you come out and ride the trails and, you know.
well, if you look at some mountain biking trails, you will know that we don't have mountain biking trails. I mean, they're like ramps and jumps, and I mean, you could ride a bike, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, you can ride your bike on them, but they're not mountain biking. I mean, in other words, these things are rigorous. It's almost like you're snowboarding or something, you know, if you think of like a half pipe, some of these things that they do on these mountain biking things.
I tried it with my father-in-law recently. It didn't go well.
For him or you?
Neither of us.
Enough biking. Let's move on to Mr. Bowling. Anything for us, Mr. Bowling? You're muted.
I have 2 matters, Mr. Mayor. First, I think I may have led you somewhat astray last week in the discussion about the clutter ordinance. I went back with the county attorney's office and looked at the language there and parsed the state enabling legislation a little bit more in depth. And I think a pretty good argument exists that basically when you're talking about garbage, waste, litter, and refuge as clutter. You don't really have to have an endangerment element to it. In other words, you don't have to show that it's in danger to life somehow. So that makes it a lot simpler to enforce if that's what council wants to do in enacting a clutter ordinance. And it's difficult for me to show you what I'm talking about verbally. I could do it verbally by pointing out the statutory language. That wouldn't be very exciting either, but I think the gist is that the clutter ordinance looks like it will be easier to enforce than I originally suggested to you. So I apologize for that. Secondly, I've been working with the chief on getting a memorandum of understanding with the county. And is the chief still there? I can't see. I haven't heard anything back from Amanda, the deputy county attorney I've been working with. I'm going to follow up with her to see what's going on. But I think we'll be able to work out whatever needs to be done. That's all I have.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Bowling?
No, related to the clutter ordinance, thank you, Jim, for that follow-up. Where are we as a town with that? Is that with government services? Or
I didn't get clear enough guidance at our last work session about the sense of council, whether that was something you wanted to move forward with drafting. It does help to know that it's relatively easy to enforce. I think that was one of our points of hesitation. If we enact it and then fail to enforce it, we've only eroded our authority. Right. But if it seems like something that we can and would use, easier to move forward with it.
Yeah, I think it's a good tool to have, to help beautify the city. It's certainly it's aesthetic appeal is something that's going to be attractive to people. It's going to affect the town and when people here visit. It would be nice to be able to do that, and to have enough tool to be able to do that. Should you decide to use it.
So is that something government services needs to develop a document for us to look at? Or?
I think I'd like to do that, work on that draft in between Government Services Committee and our attorney to go back and forth on it and bring that forward in a couple of months. And that'll help on guidance from council about sort of targeting the enforcement on it.
Come up with a rough draft and then we'll finesse it.
Okay.
But I think too, and this would be, I guess, a question for our attorney in government services, but also the extent of, is it something that would have to apply to the town as a whole, or could it be applied to a district within the town, like a historic district, which is where I think the issue exists.
Yeah.
And in terms of our own economic development or tourist attraction, that's the part that sort of like has the greatest urgency and need.
Yeah.
And it seems that Jim had suggested that it could be applied within the historic district. Is that right, Jim?
That's correct. You can apply it only to apply to the historical district, and then frankly, it's easier to enforce there because you're already enforcing aesthetics in the historical district, and it becomes a lot easier to claim that Ken bird bass in the front of somebody's yard is clutter in the historical district than it is outside the district, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
We'll move on in that direction then. Mr. Lawless, anything else to add as town administrator?
Thank you, sir. I can share a couple of other updates as far as staff work. We mentioned already the Earth Day events with Stan. Those were very rewarding, and I was glad to see block party, successful use of our outdoor refreshment area, volunteer activities. The tree planting along the river was very rewarding for me and felt good. Nice to see neighbors out and about on that. We're continuing that. Continuing the tree planting partnership with our James River Association and Virginia Department of Forestry friends. I had a couple of urban forest kind of visits from the forestry department on both the riverbank and the new wetland conservation easement near the factory, the state gave me a urban forestry management plan, which I would not have known how to consult for. But it includes details on how to take care of this new forested land and gradually reclaim it. And we got signed up with the State Department of Forestry's James River Buffer Program, kind of giving a double designation to the property that we already have a conservation easement on. But the forestry department is willing to help us with best management practices for our buffer. They care about that property as being close to the river in Miss James watershed. So by signing on with this program, we're not agreeing to anything that wasn't already included in our conservation easement, but now they're willing to send foresters to remove vines, control the invasives, restore some of the land with native trees, all taken care of out of their budget. Even, this was very interesting to me, prescribed burns on the underbrush. The concept of a forest fire within town limits took some getting used to, but it's a wetland, and that's a really good way to get some of the invasive grasses and vines out and not kill the big sycamore trees. It gives them a fighting chance. And I'm not sure how we would do the public communication that these woods are on fire and that's actually okay.
I think it sounds a lot like that.
Yeah. So I invited them to put us on the list and see if that might be a good site for it. That was fun. You mentioned the dock at the lake. Here at budget time, we had another come across that I would bring for action for you next week. The town's insurance renewal. We have a fairly special suite of insurance products for our vehicles, our buildings, police officers' liability policies that not just any insurance company can give. So there are two firms in the state that sort of pool and specialize in municipal insurance. We've been insured for several years with the one that specializes in towns and cities. The other firm mostly handles counties, but they do compete with each other. And so when we put that out for renewal, I got quotes from both companies, and the other was about $5,000 cheaper than the one we had been with. Very similar policies, just it looks like we do better pooling with the counties than we do with the cities. Mr. Boyle might have some thoughts on that. With I see no reason not to change. So I'll bring those documents to you next week for your consideration. It seems like a good time to change insurance carriers and save $5,000. It's about $20,000 of premiums that we pay, so 25% savings is significant.
I've worked much longer with the county group than I have with the municipal group, and I think the county group is excellent. So I think you'll be in good hands.
Thank you. That feels good.
That's good that you found that, Matt. That's a big deal.
It's worth it to shop around sometimes. That's all on staff works.
Any other questions for Matt?
I have some follow-up things, just to clarify sort of where we are with a few of them.
Yep.
A couple farmers market things.
Mhm.
We were looking at a new sign, because the one that's down there is looking pretty ratty.
Yes.
Are we moving forward with purchasing a new one there?
Yes, I sent that out. I haven't seen the final design for it yet, but money's spent and I've got that up at our print shop.
Cool. And then I was down there last weekend and recognized, well, I didn't recognize, but someone else recognized that there aren't any handicap parking spaces available because they're full of booths.
Mhm.
And so I think we need a plan to get 2 handicap spaces open down there.
We've been working on that.
Okay.
I heard that as well.
Virginia law, but they were available Saturday because those 2 vendors didn't show up.
But I got a new stencil to paint and designate different spots.
Okay.
That'll be done this
2
week.
weeks prior, they were
Yeah.
closer in, they were on the pavement.
Yep.
And you couldn't use that spot. I stood there for a couple hours and there were at least 5 cars stopped to assist those people from the market, whether it was gone. There was 4 minutes. So
That needs to be more clear.
We've been trying to work on that for the last 3 or 4 weeks.
My favorite question, the boulders to the riverfront.
The boulders are ready. They're in a nice pile for us. I need to get the excavator here to deliver and place them, and I've had trouble booking that. It's construction season, and it it takes a big piece of equipment. So I'm still calling around trying to find the excavator company to place them just right for us.
And then the last one is maintenance. I thought we were gonna have Cody here tonight as part of.
We had talked about that, including. Give a
Oh,
report.
beg your pardon. Not here. I missed that. You want to do that next month?
Well, and this might just be point for council discussion in general, but if we don't have a parks and maintenance committee anymore, and Cody is now filling our head of maintenance position, which is now full time. And maintenance, we're getting to a budget conversation here in a minute. It's kind of like the number one way we show people that we're taking care of it. It's like you see it, it's up front. Your tax dollars are working for you because things look nice. And so I feel like we need to have a maintenance plan in front of us so that we can talk about it. I know you have often said, keeping track of the maintenance is not necessarily your strong suit, which I get, you got a lot going on. But so if we can put that in front of us, that might help sort of distribute some of that workload. And it keeps him in charge or in front of identifying sort of, where we are with the maintenance plan over the course of the year.
Worth a try.
Yeah. Or we can get a committee together, I think, one way or the other. But we need to have some way of checking into that and making a plan,
Okay.
so we know where we are.
Let me ask you, Councilor Bullock, a question related to that. Is that something you might be interested in heading up?
No, because I currently chair the ARB.
The reason I'm asking is one of the things I think Liz some years ago created what she called, I think it was called the beautification committee at the time. And then it became Jim Tachi's thing that he did for a while. And I inherited that, of which I had no interest in inheriting that. When I mean no interest, meaning that the work of actually keeping the town, of the cleanliness of the town had nothing to do with me trying to design things for the future. So what I'm saying is I think it needs somebody who has an interest and a passion in that, of which that's not me, but somebody who, because I do think it's important, and I think it is a function that needs to happen. And there's been so many different iterations that gone from Jesse to Dave to, there's been lots of unhappiness over various things, because even when we had a good formula, so to speak, administering it was not easy. It could be, in other words, whether we were managing somebody who was cutting the grass or somebody who was trying to do various projects, it's never been an easy thing. So I guess, Matt, how do you see that? How do you see the need of either council or a committee, or like, what do we do?
I really liked the committee set up when it was well supported by volunteers that could support staff with appropriate volunteer tasks. Like nobody wants to be volunteering to do something that should be someone's job. Right. But when we could pick off special projects that were fun, I loved seeing a good volunteer group together to help start things and supplement the staff work. And there have been moments in the past 4 years where we had that really well. And then when Liz did it well, of supporting that beautification committee, mobilizing volunteers to do things that they were excited about, and then reporting back to council when the committee or the staff needed more help. And that provided the same kind of back and forth that we've had in these other committee reports. And that feels like a good way of like managing the delegation, that council can keep some eyes on it, volunteers get engaged, but it's not taking up the whole council's time at work session on, choosing the best herbicide.
But I also think the committee needs to function differently, because now we have a full-time position. And these other positions, David and Jesse, were part-time.
Yeah.
And so we now have someone who's here
Absolutely.
40 hours a week, who's now our head of maintenance. We don't have a head of maintenance department. It's department one, but it's a department, And so that committee then, I don't think should be doing much in the way of volunteering and cleaning up. That committee should probably be tasked with identifying how to do a maintenance plan. Or investigating how best to, like I mentioned, well, should we do mulch or should we do something else down there? Like someone who can do the legwork, maybe figuring out those sorts of things.
Matthew, you remember we discussed this in building services, and one idea was to prioritize for him because that was one of his weaknesses. And
Sure.
I don't know where we're going with that. It was just an idea at the time.
For the, yeah, I'm certainly keep it on government services for a couple of months. I don't know. Or are you thinking more of a, you know, standing advisory on some of the judgment calls of, you know, what species of tree are we going to plant before we put a contract out to make sure it's a solid contract?
Could be that, yeah, it's
and
not a
then-
nebulous idea, I just know
Yeah.
that, like, as a body, we just don't, I don't actually feel like I understand maintenance in the town.
Yeah.
And when people like say things like, well, what are you doing with this, what are you doing about that, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't make me feel good, and if the number one thing that we offer people is how the town looks, that's sort of like our most public facing task. We should all like know what that is and know how it moves. And make sure that we are prioritizing the places in town. Canal Basin, we're going to Bateau Festival in a month, and Canal Basin Square is not good. You know, and so we need a plan to get the packet boat, if not fixed, at least like cleaned off. There's still a pile of bricks down by the lamppost. Those need to just be taken out. We need to mulch down there. There's 2 metal signposts that are laying over on the sidewalk.
Right, exactly.
So like, that's what's been there for 3 months. So I don't know, so like, why?
Right.
That doesn't make sense to me. That's an hour's job. So I feel like we have lost, we just aren't keeping our eyes on this. And so the most direct way would be to have our head of maintenance just make a report to us, like our chief of police, and say, hello, this is where we are in the maintenance program for this month. This is what we've got coming up. This is what I'm working on.
Right.
And then can take feedback. Well, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm hearing, clarify those questions, or make a punch list. You know, okay, so that looks like these are the things that we need to get done before our next work session. And that feels to me like sort of the most direct and efficient use of our time. But I don't think it needs to take a committee. We've got a guy working full time who can make a plan and what have you. So that's my feedback.
It makes a lot of sense, and maybe for this next one, everybody here that sees something that needs to be done, funnel it to Matt, you make a list and give it to Cody. This is what the council members have seen around town that needs to get done. And you could sort of look at it and prioritize what you have on your list. Because these pops in and out, say, this is what we did at the work session, this is what the council has presented me, town administrator with, let's get it done.
I do feel better with that because of our charter and my role as a supervisor, that your police chief, your town clerk, and your town administrator are your council appointed positions. And I'm worried about Mr. Walls feeling 7 bosses instead of 1. I think with the council feedback at work sessions, I can supervise it.
Let's try that
think I
for the
really
next
do.
one, and see if anything is done. Nothing is done, then we'll call it on the
All right.
card.
Well, then, the next step-
And it's me because it's a failure to supervise.
okay. Then I would say Canal Basin Square needs to get cleaned up.
I'm clear.
Yeah, for
Just,
sure.
you know, get him in the habit of stopping by in the morning, say anything new for me to do today.
Yeah.
Report to your supervisor, then everybody report to your supervisor when they go to work.
And we can do more walkabouts together.
Okay.
It's good.
Let's try it that way and then see in the next work session. we can decide if we need to change it.
You know, one thing I might suggest, and this is our former Vice Mayor Laura Malusi had a decent work on kind of trying to create an understanding, like a matrix of all the things. So it might not be a bad idea to contact her to see, could she speak to, I mean, maybe even address that, because she was very knowledgeable on that subject and had taken it to a pretty good level. And I think that's something that was lost with her, that she understood on it. In fact, I think you might have
I
even
know what
dialogued with
you
her
mean. Yep.
about it.
Okay. No new topics tonight, so let's get into the budget.
I have a couple more of these on hand if you need them for reference. last year. I'm sorry, I did not put a full council set, but there are 3 there. The public hearing on your budget is next week. I've only heard a little bit of feedback on it so far, but as expected, it relates to the advertised changes in taxes, especially on restaurants. And the restaurant industry has been very much in the news for the past 2 years, and restaurant owners are concerned about anything that will impact their business. So I expect you'll hear from restaurant owners, if you've not already, at public hearing. They're concerned, same as they were 3 years ago, with how a tax increase might impact their business. And I take that concern seriously. It's the town's single largest revenue line. So it's the first place that we look when we need to support our basic operations. But we certainly don't want to kill our golden goose. And if a tax increase damages the businesses and doesn't produce the revenue that we hope it will, then we haven't done anything good. So I took some time to look around local and national economic data to try to support my own recommendation and make sure that we're doing something responsible. The scale of the tax increase that we're talking about is from 4.5% to 6%. That means 15 cents on a $10 pizza. The 1.5% increase means $60,000 of new town revenue, and that puts us on a much more stable footing going forward. The alternative that town council rejected was maybe an 8-cent real estate tax. You can raise that money either way, but the meals tax appears simpler to collect, less disruptive, and spreads our tax base out wider. Instead of a few hundred property owners in town, we're talking about thousands of shoppers passing through the area, some who live here, some who travel from all over. The first place I looked at was a tax comparison. The most up-to-date report published statewide is from 2018, so I'm looking at a couple of years old data where the UVA Cooper Center hasn't been able to collect and publish during the pandemic. But back then, the meals tax rates around all of the towns in the state ranged from 2% to 8%, and the median was 5%. So we're a hair below that now and propose to raise a little bit above it. Locally, you have 8% in Appomattox, 6% in Farmville, Orange is at 8%, Charlottesville is at 6.5%. Albemarle County advertised and passed an increase to 6%, matching our proposal last week. So we're a little bit below the average now, and the proposed increase takes us a little bit above that average. And we've not seen, collapse of tourism in Appomattox or Farmville or any of the beach localities. I was also super curious about this question of how the tax changes the spending behavior. Do people change their purchasing decisions when prices go up like this? And the U.S. Agriculture Department has studied this very carefully. They care because of families' spending choices on food. The Agriculture Department is supplying the restaurants, but it's also running programs like WIC and SNAP that are the nutrition assistance programs. So they care about how people spend money on food. So one of the things they've tracked is how spending on food has changed over time. People go out to eat more than they did 50 years ago, but are also spending less money on food overall. American agriculture has been really effective in making groceries relatively cheaper than they were. So this restaurant spending has gone up, but the amount of your household budget spent on groceries has actually gone down. So there's more room in your budget for other kinds of spending. The other part of this that USDA studied was how sensitive are people to changes in their income and their food spending. And the big version of their economic data, pretty kind of common sense. When your income takes a hit, you buy more canned soup and substitute, steak for Campbell's. when the price of restaurant food goes up, some people do go out to eat less, mostly not, and it only changes a little bit. So the example I gave, if a restaurant were selling 1,000 pizzas in a month, our tax increase would mean 2 or 3 fewer pizzas per month. And that's large sample, long time series USDA data. So I can safely answer the restaurateur's concern of, if you raise my taxes, I will do less business. Yes, you will do 0.5% less business, and the town will earn the revenue it needs to sustain our operations. So that's the judgment call that I present to town council is, yes, it hurts businesses a little bit. Is that something you're willing to do?
I don't think anybody sitting at this table thinks about the meals tax anywhere they go to eat. We just go to eat. They don't worry about the meals tax. I was just quick calculation. I took my wife and daughter to lunch on Saturday. The bill was $57. At 4.5%, that's $3.42 tax. At 6%, it's $2.50, and then vice versa. So it was 86 cents on $57 bill.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's,
Yeah, nobody's.
and as Matt and I have discussed, if we could keep track of the sales of food in town, particularly Jay's and Amici's, most of it's not town residents. There's people picking up stuff on the way home to Buckingham or Nevada, to eat when they get there. I have no problem with 6%. County just went to 6%. I was telling Matt in Virginia Powell this morning, Virginia Beach wants to raise theirs from 5.5% to 6%. So 6% seems to be the norm. And I have no problem with going 6%.
The suppliers aren't supplying like they used to. Fertilizer's going up if you get it. Everything that restaurants buy is going up, everything. You know, the economists say we're at 8.9% inflation rate, and some say 9, and some say 10, which is a hidden tax. And this tax, I mean, we're actually competing with, you know, inflation, if you will, but this tax here is just an additional operating expenses that we passed on to the consumer. And you know, when you're spending $4.19, you may want to go out to eat, but you know, I don't drive, let's say for example, I don't drive to Charlottesville for anything. I don't have to. I try to shop here. And gas is one of the reasons. So, I mean, I was listening today to an economist, and the bottom line is, you know, it's just a bad time to go up on taxes. I mean, we do what we have to do, but you know, 1.5% here, 8.9% here, so on and so on. You know, when I worked at the liquor store, the one across the street here, a fifth of Bacardi rum was $4.60. And that was 1976, I guess.
Good year. Good liquor prices.
Now the same is like $17.60, and it's the same stuff, and it's all taxes.
Well, I don't know, I've given this some thought. So I certainly supported raising the meals tax the last time. And I do get the spending behavior doesn't change much with the kinds of meals tax raises we're looking at. But I also feel like, it feels kind of more like a political problem raising the taxes right now. And I think because it has to do with sort of perception. And I think it does in some ways come back to maintenance. You know, because if you are raising my taxes, I think someone wants to know, like, what does it look like? How do I see it? Do I see the town looking better? No? Well, then why are we paying it? You know, 1.5% more in meals taxes, you know? And so I think that's important to sort of attend to. The other thing that I think we're sitting with is the $60,000 from the county, which is coming our way, which is kind of a saving grace, because that's the difference of raising meals taxes.
Certainly covers it for this year.
Right, for this year, because I don't think not raising taxes is a long-term thing we can do. We know that. But given just kind of how things are around us, that feels like something that can fill a gap for a year. But I do think, so in other words, what I'm suggesting is we don't raise the meals tax this year, simply because we got the $60,000 check from the county. But I do think we should raise the transient lodging tax to 8%. I think we should raise the minimum fees that are like $30, make them all 50. I think we should raise those minimum permit fees up to at least $50, because that seems reasonable to me. And open up that DMV, the whole no permits.
Yeah.
I think, and that, because that DMV is supposed to be an income generator for us. And so I really want to see what that thing generates before we start moving some of these other pieces. Because we got that to generate revenue, so let's see what we can do and position it, so let's just open all day and see how much business we can move through that thing.
And it's interesting too, I know tax is tax and prices are prices. And one doesn't necessarily have to do with the other, but being in the food service industry, a lot of places are taking a hit right now.
Yep.
I'm gonna use Baines just because it's the only example I know of around here, when you're paying $3.09 a gallon for milk. And literally overnight, it went from $3.09 a gallon to $4.29 a gallon. We got through about 10 gallons of milk a day. You know, that might mean, and it hasn't yet, but it might mean a 25-cent increase on lactose, or, you know, whatever the case may be. So people are gonna get hit with that tax increase and price increase at the same time.
And
They have, you know,
labor costs, I mean, people can negotiate now because we need 8 million more workers in the United States. And these, you know, these people are getting paid nothing, they're demanding. So there's labor costs in there too.
Yeah. So like I say, I think we're gonna have to raise the meals tax. You know, just to provide what we need to do, because we want to pay staff, we want to pay for the things we need. Boulder prices are going up, you know. So I get it. I just think we're just kind of in a situation this year where we just kind of have things in place where between the DMV, the $60,000 from the county, this year we can maybe do the transient lodging, up the permit fees to 50, and then just kind of see where that gets us through this fiscal year. And look at it again next summer.
Is there a show of enthusiasm for Mr. Bullock's proposal?
Yeah, we have.
Run those numbers and see how it looks?
Yeah, if you're gonna raise the transit occupancy tax, that's great, and like I say, see what happens with the business tax. So we're alone this year. I just wanna know how much do we still owe the county for the $100,000 mistake and the bank for $50,000 mistake?
That shows in your supplemental and is the reason that the supplemental is negative and the 2022 is positive. So that's $110,000 check that's cut out of our reserves to pay back the clerk's error. It was 5 years in the making. And we agree that, yes, it's an error and we ought to give back the money that's not ours. There's no room or reason to fight that. So it's time to correct it. The county offered a payment plan, but the money's in the bank, and I think the right thing to do is give it back. They're willing to help soften the blow of that with a contribution to our sidewalk improvements. It's in our mutual interest. So that reduces the offset to our cash balances. Both are in this budget.
Since the two of you have come up with all these figures, and I'm talking about the county. Of course, I had a guy who's teaching that, but things will work if we transient occupancy tax 8%, leave meals tax where it is, pay off all our debts.
Yes, so the proposed 2023 has that bottom line of 107,000. That 107,000 will get smaller, but still be in the black. So you won't be adopting a deficit budget. It'll just give us less cushion in the future. and increase the chances of having the same debate next year or the year after.
Yeah.
But to Mr. Payne's point of this is, this is a bad time with other inflation to be hitting restaurants again. That's well taken. And it moves that debate to the future.
And with the transit tax, that definitely hits the visitors, they come and they go. So-
Yes.
So we need more Airbnbs.
Yeah, the local folks don't get hurt as bad.
People are spending money on vacations. Are spending money more so than the, frazzled mom who doesn't have time to make dinner and she's running to a beach to pick up pizza,
Yeah.
might not have the same money to spend.
So-
You'd be adopting a budget that's 107,000 in the black. It offsets the negative in this year, but 110 of that is one-time error from 5 years in the past. So if you take that off, you're going down 30 in this year and coming back up 107. With the proposals that you've changed, this number will get a little bit smaller, but still be positive.
How much smaller?
I'd have to look hard at the DMV numbers
Mhm.
and talk with them and compare to other selects.
Well, right, it's a bit of a gamble.
It is.
I get that.
Yeah.
Because we don't know,
Yep.
even though we've only had appointment only here.
Mhm.
It just seems like, I don't know, we got it there for that
I just
reason.
don't want this council to be in a position where they have to even consider a real estate tax.
No, I don't think that, I mean, that's why like the meals tax is gonna happen.
Mhm.
I think that will happen next year. But I
What's
just-
the next mayor?
Right, exactly. But I just feel like if we've got, like Howard said, I think we've got to push it from somewhere else this year, it'll fill the gap. Roll the dice and kick the can. 2 games. Yeah.
I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so any other questions or any other areas of this we need to talk about?
Is it June that we have to adopt the budget?
If you're comfortable next week after your public hearing, you can do it. And I will,
Will
I'll-
we see
I'll
the
br-
numbers before next week?
I'll bring you revisions to that proposal so that you can put them side by side and see the difference. If you're comfortable voting, then you can. If there's anything else that you need to revise or sit on, waiting until June 20th, I think it is, it's
I
fine.
think if we leave the meals tax alone, we'll have a short public hearing.
Clear. But the arithmetic you're talking about isn't hard to do. That won't.
Right, exactly. Okay, so we'll see that.
All right. That sounds like a plan. Any other budgeting things we need to talk about? Good? Good, great, good. Any other business at all? Anybody have anything on this? I have no questions.
I just want to, thank everybody for the thoughts and prayers.
You're gonna get in tomorrow?
The hometown could get pretty bad today by the Russians. Saw a lot of videos of a lot of apartments, in fact, one was close to, one of my wife's friends, he had gotten his mother out and the apartment got blown up. So, I'll be in Dulles tomorrow, picking up 3 members of the family, so they'll be, they're safe and sound, they got a on the plane, train, automobile type of ride. 2 weeks in the making.
You go, when they get settled in and comfortable, let us know, because I'd like to come by and say hello.
Yeah.
I think we'd all like to come by and just introduce ourselves, let them know that we care about them. And that if there's anything that we can do as a community, just let you know, or let us know.
Okay, well, I'll be quite honest with you, I budgeted for 2, and 6 is a little bit different to me, so we're not gonna have any leftovers.
Oh, speaking of groceries, yes.
Then we'll have a meals tax.
That's right. Exactly. But thanks again, and you'll be seeing.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, it's, no other business, meetings adjourned.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you all.
Right.
Again, for everything you do.